Joining me now is George Lynch, his band Lynch Mob. They have a new album called Babylon. It'll be available October 20th. George, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
No, I super appreciate the call, and it's good to talk to you as well and get an opportunity to let people know what we're up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our visual audience, you're getting a little bit of a treat because we are literally riding shotgun with George as he's driving through parts unknown, as we like to say. Even
Yeah,
even
it's
if
like
they are known, it sounds more mysterious if you're just on some desert highway outside of Joshua Tree or something.
I wish I'm in the traffic on a freeway in Los Angeles, but oh well, you can romanticize it if you want. But it's kind of like getting coffee with cars with comedians. That show.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
except
exactly.
musicians in a
It's
van.
Yeah, it's driving in vans with rock stars, which now that I say it out loud, that actually sounds super creepy. So maybe we won't call it that, driving
Yeah,
in vans.
actually, wow. Oh my God. Yeah, no, we get in trouble for that.
So
Yeah, let's not
yeah,
do that.
it's a very different story, I guess. So I'm glad to get a chance to talk to you. I thought I was going to get a chance to talk to you a couple years ago. I talked to both Jeff Pilson and Robert Mason for that second End Machine album. It didn't work out, and any of that. So even though it's 2 years late, I wanted to mention I actually really liked that album. I liked the first one, and then I was a big fan of that album. And I know that there's more End Machine planned. Robert focusing back on Warren, but that album in that moment in time, I was a big fan of it. So I wanted to thank you for it, basically.
Yeah, you're going to end up hating that album soon
Okay.
when you hear the
It's,
third one.
oh, that's what I like. All right.
You're literally going to just use it as a frisbee, or you're going to chuck it out your back window. Yeah, it's this new one is so good. It's crazy. I mean, we all think our newest records are the greatest records since the invention of music, but
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, look, if you follow the progression, Led Zeppelin 1 was pretty good, but then when you got Led Zeppelin 2, it's like, all right, I'm tossing the second one and then 3 and 4. So yeah, it's just what have you done for me
so
lately? Give me the new stuff, George.
right. Well, I don't want to get caught in that trap that you're trying to lead me into to a claim that our record is as good as Led Zeppelin's, but
Right. Well,
in trouble.
yeah, it's at least on par with Coda, the extra record that they released after they had broken up, just the
Hey,
leftover. Anyway,
I would happy to be the worst on
yeah.
par with the worst Led Zeppelin record. That'd be a good company to keep.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's like if
I just,
somebody tells you that the one with Emotional Rescue was the worst Stones album, I'm like, all right, well, it's still great. So it's
yeah, you
there's
don't want
some
to
of
get
those
caught in that
catalogs where
trap
you're
of,
like, yeah, like a bad Aerosmith album, well, at least before the year 2000 is like, it's still got like some great songs on it. So, but we're talking about your new album, the Lynch Mob album, Babylon. And one of the things I like about it, I've heard two of the songs. We'll talk about the two I've heard. They only sent me two, but there's 10 songs on it. And, we're talking about, we've just mentioned the names of some classic albums. And as much as I love a 17, 18 track album, there is something where you feel like when the artist is like, here's 10 songs, these are the best ones. Yeah, we've got 40 other ones, but you probably don't want to hear them. Let's just hear the best. So talk a little bit about putting together Babylon, the new Lynch Mob album.
yeah, there isn't 40 songs, and we don't do records like that anymore where we overwrite and
Right,
then
sure.
call out the best ones. We just write the ones we want to write, and that's it. But
Okay.
the other thing is, I just kind of wondered about that slow creep, mission creep of, we went from 9, 8, 9, 10 songs a record to like you said, 15 songs on an album. It's like, wait, I'm doing 50% more work for 1/10 of the money here. I don't think this makes any sense. So also, I think you value the music more when it's a little more rare, when it's a little
Yeah.
more precious because it's a limited commodity. Spend a little more time with everything, and maybe a little you're not so quick to dismiss something. You might give it a chance because, well, this is all the real estate we got. Let's utilize it to our best abilities here and really give it a fair listen. and I think that's working for us. And I personally, for me, from a creative standpoint, I really it's much healthier for me, at least in my mind, to be able to focus on uh, a, a digestible amount of work and material, uh, rather than just, oh, we need 14 songs and let's just write like madmen, and maybe we'll let a few things go, and this is filler, and this is this isn't our best track, but hey, we need 14 tracks, so just throw that in there to take up space. And I don't like that either. So, and it's hard to come up with 14 inspired songs.
Yeah.
And so 10 is a nice number. It's what I grew up with. Albums were, God, I had Cream albums that were 6 songs on the album. Of course, one of them would be 11 minutes, the whole side of the record, and records were limited to whatever they were limited to, 30 minutes or something, both side. So it's a different
Or
world
yeah,
now.
there's there's Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick, which the whole song is basically the whole album, I think, So, you
Oh,
always get
Jesus.
those exceptions. Yeah.
I like that. I love stoner music, because essentially when I was a kid, basically that's what we were. We didn't call it that, and we didn't know that's what
Right.
we were, but that's what we were. But there's this band, I think they're called Sleep, or maybe that's the name of the song. But anyways, it's I think something like an hour and 17 minutes.
Oh wow.
But dirge stoner, hour and 17 minutes. So extremely monotonous down to insane riff over and over. It's really cool. It's funny to listen to. I don't think putting it on just to piss people off.
Yeah.
We,
It's
we
sort of
use that
go ahead.
we use that to use that as our opening song before we play it live, to kind of get people warmed up.
You wanted them to get warmed up with Sleep.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Because everything after Sleep is kind of more exciting,
Yeah. It's a great point. Yeah.
relatively. Yeah.
No, you think about it, yeah, like a lot of rock and metal bands will, use some like overture of classical music before they get started, and then they basically try to blow the roof off. So there is something to be said for that. You're sort of talking about, being younger and some of the music you listen to. Obviously, you've been playing professionally for so long and been in the public eye for so much of that time. But when you first started playing guitar, was there, oh, I heard this song or I saw this guy or something, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that? Or was it just you were handed a guitar and was like, okay, you figure it out? What was the process for you first really starting to play, even if it's just goofing around as a kid before you got like serious about it?
Where there was a couple different stages of the process of committing myself to being a guitar player. Initially, it was just kind of a casual. Well, I don't know if casual is the right word, but an interest in the instrument itself,
Sure.
and then that led me to listening to music, and that coincided with the emergence of rock and roll, because this is mid '60s. So all those things kind of colluded to uh, garner my interest, where I the Beatles came out,
Yeah.
identified with George because we had the same name. And that led to, soon after that was, the British Invasion and the Four Horsemen, and, Beck, Clapton, Page, and Hendrix. And, I was very fortunate to be raised around that time. But, in the preteen years, I was, uh, just getting my chops up. And I had my initial interest was really more around flamenco music and jazz music. Not that I could really play it well, but that's what I was listening to because my father listened to and introduced me to. And he was sort of a fledgling audiophile and a musicologist, amateur musicologist in some ways. And he listened to deep music, and Coltrane and Miles Davis, and just beautiful classical flamenco guitar music and everything. And so the first song I ever learned was Malagueña, and then I went from that to getting an electric guitar, and that took a while, to kind of ramp up, because I didn't know what I was doing, and then but there was a point where it was maybe 14, getting on going on 15, where it was just like, yeah, now I really felt like now I started developing a style, and I was concerned about tone, and I was kind of putting it together when I started getting my little garage bands together and everything like that. Yeah, it was a very, very exciting time. And then I don't think I ever played as purely and honestly as I did then, you know, and as
Right.
emotionally from the heart.
Right, especially, if you're just, in the garage playing with your friends, it's different than if you're up on stage trying to, put on an actual show instead of like, oh, let's just see where this goes. Speaking of shows, what I'm curious about, do you remember what was the first live like rock band you saw, whether you bought a ticket for it or if it was, or maybe maybe you jumped a fence. I mean, who knows? Could have been like
You're
an
able to do
Altamont
that.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah, you're able to do that in those days. Well, I mean, the first rock bands I saw were local bands that were pretty pro local bands that would play at our school, that kind of thing. And that was mind blowing,
Sure.
and because I'd never really witnessed anything like that, and the power of it, uh, and the potential of what seeing what you could do with guitar, probably maybe in retrospect, if I would go back and listen and look at what I witnessed back then, it wouldn't be as impressive. I'd be like, yeah, wasn't that great? But I don't know, but at the time, I was just coming from a place of ignorance and not being exposed to that kind of stuff. And then my first big concert was, I would say it was either Queen and Mahogany Rush. I mean, no, I don't think it was. Geez, I don't remember what it was. I did remember seeing ZZ Top, Tres Hombres tour, but that was a little later, so
Sure.
that was like early
Well, I
'70s.
mean, any of those being, early shows to go to. I mean, getting to see Freddie Mercury or seeing the guys in ZZ Top. I mean, that's definitely, it's not a bombastic, explosion stage show, but at the same time, it's like you talk about just watching masters, I guess. Not to sound cheesy about it, but people who are actually masters in their craft, like Freddie Mercury, obviously everybody in the band, everybody in ZZ Top. Yeah, those are two great ones to kind of take in and go, oh, okay, that's how it's done. I mean, I've only ever seen video of Freddie Mercury, and just the whether it's a modest venue or Wembley Stadium, just having what 80,000 people eating out of his hand. It's a fun thing to watch for sure.
Greatest band in the history of rock and roll. I mean, they were just unbelievably phenomenal and firing on all cylinders, and they had the image and they had the songs and impeccable musicians, and they all were unique. And Brian May was one of my huge guitar heroes, and just the whole thing. I mean, they were real rock stars. You don't get that anymore. But no, I'd seen other concerts before that. The most important concert I'd ever seen was Hendrix, I thought,
Sure.
as
Oh,
far as
wow.
guitar inspiration, and that was at the Forum. And I actually got to meet him because he was at a music store that I would go to and hang out all the time. And I have a picture with me with him when I was young,
Oh,
and
wow.
that was something I'll carry with me, for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. And
I
I
always
always
like to
gauge
use.
myself towards that experience.
Oh, that's all right. I usually like to use the example. I tell this anecdote somewhat regularly to musicians because it's so funny to me to think of when I first heard of it. When my mom was in junior high, growing up in New Jersey in the late 60s, she and her girlfriends went to go and see their favorite band, the Monkees, and they hated the guy who opened the show, who was Jimi Hendrix. They're like, he was playing guitar with his feet, and you know, obviously the 12, 13-year-old girls maybe weren't ready for it, but it's so funny to think about the idea of getting to witness that and just go, no, where's Daydream Believer? Come on. Which is a great song, by the way. I'm not shitting on Daydream Believer, but
Well,
it's an interesting
that
band.
was a that was a great album. That Monkeys album was
Yeah.
fantastic. I loved it. That was about the same time,
Yeah.
and I had that record too, and I loved it for different reasons,
Yeah.
But
No, I
yeah,
think I think for all
yeah. I
the
think
for
one
all
of
the
the
teenage girls who were put off by it, there were probably a lot of people who were like, "Oh yeah, the Monkees are pretty cool." Like, "Whoa, this guy's next level." I mean, it's some bands usually do a pretty good job of bringing out the stuff they like. Like Van Halen always had like the like Kool and the Gang or some of the most random openers that you could ever see. But it was like, well, Pearl Jam does that too, even to this day. But anyway, I did want to talk to you more.
There's
Go
a
ahead.
headline from that concert. It says from the day after Hendrix opened for the Monkees in some city, a local paper put a headline something to the effect of a scary black man, gyrates and sets guitar on fire, to the horror of whatever,
Yeah. Which
mobs.
which that's one of those great headlines where you're like, well, where do I sign up to see that?
Oh boy, he
It's
had a
exactly,
fucking better sales pitch in the history of music. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it's
I
like
mean,
Alice Cooper talks about how Frank Zappa saw the earliest the earliest iteration of his band, and they weren't up first, and as they played, a reasonably full concert hall emptied out entirely, and Zappa was like, "We got to figure out how to turn that into something." That you can have that kind of reaction where people are so put off by you that they're going to leave, and I guess Zappa probably knew something about that. Anyway, I do want to talk to you about your album. I know that you're out on the road, driving around. So Babylon, I've heard two songs from it. Time After Time is one of them, and Caught Up is the other. Our audio audience will get to hear a little bit of that. But boy, I've made the mistake of trying to play music while we're live on YouTube, and those videos usually come down right away. But the audio versions are a little bit more forgiving. So the album, as we said, Babylon will be out October 20th, and it's for Frontiers, which for our audience is this Italian label. And odds are that if some of your favorite artists and bands from like the 80s and 90s have put out albums in the last decade, probably at least one of them or two of them were on Frontiers. Now, I don't know if you've collaborated with them before, but kind of talk about getting this opportunity to do this eighth Lynch Mob record with Frontiers.
well, you know, there's two sides to everything that we do as musicians. There's the creative side, the music side, and whatever, and then there's the business of music. And on that side, that's not something I really talk too much about. But for me, it's interesting because I'm as interested in the business part of life as I am with the creative side. And so there was there was a reason why I went with Frontiers. I have a long history with Frontiers. I've done lots of records with Frontiers, and there's probably only 3 or 4 labels in the world that really cater to our genre of music, from whatever you call it. This kind of. I mean, we're not 80s rock, really, but
80s 90s hard rock. I mean, there's things that people call it, there's things that people call it to be dismissive, but it's basically hard rock from the 80s and 90s. It's
yeah,
it's all rock and roll. All the bands that we talked about, it's not like it's different than than putting on Queen or Zeppelin or even the Monkees. But I don't know, people do tend to like to narrow the niche a little bit, and well, it has to be
that's
this
what
kind. Yeah.
that's what humans do. Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
got to
Exactly.
categorize everything, but so that's a label that we're very familiar with, but in recent years or even decades, I think all the Lynch Mob releases have been with Rat Pack Records. But this one time we went with Frontiers because Frontiers agreed to also pick up another album that I've been working on for over 10 years. It was called The Banishment. It was sort of an industrial-esque project that I was doing with this programmer, master mixer engineer guy named Joe Hayes, who was my partner. And we were very proud of the record. It's a very deep record, and I love it. And of course, it's not what people want to hear from me, and it failed. But they did release the record, so at least we got it out there, and that's the reason I went with Frontiers. But I have an extremely long history with them. It's not like they were a gamble or anything like that. They service that market very well, and they know their base, and they know what they like, and they don't like anything that's experimental or off-brand.
Right.
And that's what was a little strange to me, just on the business side, is they picked up this record that's something that I'm not known for, and people pretty much universally rejected, but unfortunately, but I'm not sure why they did that. But anyways, that's the story behind that. Normally, Lynch Mob is a Rat Pack band,
Right, right.
and this
Well,
record, this Lynch Mob record, is a little different than the other Lynch Mob records, in that we really sort of turned our back on trying to chase Wicked Sensation, or think of it in as another point in the line of continuum from 1989. It wasn't that. We just, we've got Gabriel Colon in the band now, and Sharon, and of course Jimmy, him and I played together for many, many years. And so it was really a new beginning. So we just said, well, listen, let's not put on Wicked Sensation and try to write that again. That was what it was. And things aren't ever going to align again in that way. And we'll just be ourselves. And we were, and this is the record that came out. In fact, when I listened to it, I thought, this sounds more like Guns N' Roses than Lynch Mob, which is not a bad thing, I guess. But it just kind of built the songwriting, because I write, the music,
right, of course.
not the lyrics, but or the melodies, but the music. And so I write the music thinking of the singer. I've got the singer in mind, and then I'm sort of subconsciously writing for that singer. But I wasn't as familiar with Gabriel as I was with, let's say, Oni and other people I've worked with. So it was an unknown commodity. I wasn't really sure what the results were going to be. So when the dust had settled and we're finally kind of getting all the arrangements together, and listening to the vocals that he had recorded, I didn't know what to make of it. And quite honestly, I still don't. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I
No,
just, it was
the
unexpected. I was really, wow, this is not the record I thought we were going to make, because of his voice. And his voice is amazing. I love his voice. It's unique. And I think that's the most important thing, is it's not being good or bad, but just being yourself, and being, having something to offer that's unlike anything else in the world. So, and he has that. He has a style and a unique quality to his voice. Um, we did have to work pretty hard to get the vocals right. He's a little inexperienced, so we had to really all work together, come together as a band, and contribute and work on getting the melodies and the hooks and the titles and things like that. They're important to us, and I think important to Lynch Mob fans. Uh, to the point where we're pretty well satisfied with the results. And then when we listened to it, we're like, wow, I don't know what this is, but it's cool. So we started to experiment. We started adding, because record's been done for a while, and we started adding some of those songs to our live set, because we play regularly. And my experience with playing new songs from any band, Dokken or anybody else to play with, is nobody wants to hear it, even if it's already on a record and they're familiar with it. Well, in this case, the songs that we added were completely unfamiliar to anybody, because there's no record, so they
right,
had
right.
no idea what they were listening to. And we had really, and this shocked me, actually. We had a really phenomenal response. The first time we tried that, and I thought, oh, that's just an anomaly. Just a good crowd. It was a good night. Maybe just whatever, throwing us a bone, whatever. And we'll try it again tomorrow and see what happens. The same thing happened, and same thing's been happening ever since, the last 6 months. So that's a good sign,
Yeah,
that
no, absolutely. And
organically people responded to it organically without ever hearing it. I'm not saying this, pat myself on the back or anything. I was just saying it was a kind of a surprising thing that happened, and I'm hoping that's an indication that the record will be well received.
yeah, no, I mean, look, I'll go and see plenty of bands who I know have a new album, and a lot of times, they might play one. Other times, you can look up set lists online. You'll see that bands like, oh, they never play anything from the new album. And
Mm.
I think you don't want to do the, obviously a band like Iron Maiden, they're like, people are coming to see us no matter what. We're doing 6 songs from the new album, and they'll just deal with it. But a lot of times, one or two is probably about right. And you do the best to kind of sprinkle it into the songs they came out for. But for
hide it.
to find that it works, yeah, hide it. Yeah, but it's also like, if it's a new song that hasn't been released, that can be kind of cool to hear. But I do get that, like, people are like, yeah, that's not really what I'm here for. And just to for our audience, you're talking about Gabriel Colon is the singer on, and I've only heard the two songs, but and I'd never heard him on anything before. I understand he's Puerto Rican, and he's been with some bands in the past, but I think he's great. And getting to hear the full album, I think I'm looking forward to get to hear it. So you were talking about how you've played some shows. I know that there's a record release party October 25th here in LA at the world famous Whiskey A Go Go. So that should be fun. So if it's the record release party, people should expect to hear new songs, right? I mean, it's like right there in the billing that it's like, hey, this is for our new record, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're gonna have a additional songs from the record in the set, and then we're also doing an unplugged thing earlier in the day, and something on the street, some signing on Sunset or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, we're spending the whole day up there doing whatever we can to kind of, you know, shake hands and kiss babies and help people become aware of this record.
Yeah,
Uh,
and do interviews driving around in a van. I mean that's always going to
uh,
help. Uh,
I'm
uh,
I'm still that 20, 30-year-old kid that, will sleep on your couch and fucking go, drag my ass around in a van and carry my own equipment to set up and play a show to 100 people. I mean, it's to me, it's whether you're playing in, no matter what level you're playing on, it's really essentially the same thing. You know, at that
yeah,
moment,
no, no. Yeah,
you just
I'm always interested in a guy like Vivian Campbell, who's obviously been in Def Leppard for a long time, but he also has that band Last in Line, so he could literally be playing for like 25,000 people, and 2 nights later it's probably like 100, and he's probably carrying his gear. And it's like he seems like one of those guys who's like, yeah, I mean, I'm playing, so just with the number of people watching isn't really what it's about. So obviously,
I've literally run into him doing exactly that. I mean, I know him and I've
sure,
talked to him
sure.
and run into him many times, but there was one particular time I remember we were both staying at this same hotel, and it was this sprawling kind of weird hotel somewhere, I don't know, in the Midwest or something, upper Midwest. And he was in these like quarter-mile long hallways, uh, to get to the lobby, and he was dragging all his luggage and it was falling over and he had to get down these stairs and everything. I was like, God damn, freaking Vivian Campbell, dude, you're playing Def Leppard, as you mentioned. You don't need to be doing this, but he does it out of love. You know,
Yeah,
loves
no,
it.
exactly. And it's very cool to see, that
But
that
I
he
would say
just like.
Last in Line is a tremendous band, and they do well. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not. It's not like they're, having to necessarily drive around in a beat up van pulling a trailer
No,
lugging their
but
own gear. I do actually. We share their tech guy that works for them, and they've got a guy that basically, I think he's based in Florida, but he has all their equipment, he has the truck, and he just goes wherever he needs to go in the country. He goes there. They travel with their own equipment, which is nice.
yeah.
And he sets everything up, and they just, they fly in, they do the shows, and he goes back home, and they go back home. So they got, and then they play decent venues, and they make okay money. I mean, it's not, of course, it's not Def Leppard, but
No.
it's still valid. It's not like they're, out there,
Yeah.
booking shows and sleeping in their,
No.
fans'
And
couches or anything.
yeah, and
It's
and and
pro
I
level.
especially like the second and third Last in Line albums. I think they're great. I didn't mean to shortchange it. It's more the idea that you're in Def Leppard, you can take the rest of the year off. What do they do? Like 50, 75 dates. So, you don't have to do anything else. But he does that, which, it's obviously that's not the paycheck gig. And not that Def Leppard is. I'm talking myself into a corner, but it's cool when you see stuff like that, and it's like
I prefer
when.
Last in Line to Def Leppard.
Well,
Last in
I
Line
think,
is a really, really good band.
yeah,
A really good band. It's like one of those bands that we play with, that like King's Exit. If we play with them, you know, usually we think we can kick everybody's ass, but we playing the last in line. They're going to hit a little harder,
Yeah.
and King's X is going to. You can't beat King's X. I mean, that's just how it is.
No,
That's all right.
absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. I've worked with enough comedians in my life, and you know, there's always those guys you don't want to follow. You know, it's like sometimes you want the ego, you're like you want to be the headliner, and then there's other times like, yeah, I just want to get out before that guy goes on, you know, because I can
You don't want to
relax.
go on after. You don't want to go on after Norm Macdonald, right?
That's one of the guys that I know actually. Well, used to, yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Uh,
I worked with Dennis Miller for a long time, and he and Dana Carvey
oh.
would do shows together. And
Yeah.
he's like, and they would switch, and he's like, yeah, when Carvey goes before me, it's like I'll bring it, I'll still make people up, but it's like I got to work a little harder, you know, because
Mhm.
you know. But so it's basically one of those kind of things that I've talked to people about. Well, George, I've enjoyed chatting with you. The new album Babylon will be out October 20th. As I mentioned, for people here in LA, the show at the Whiskey a Go Go will be the record release party. And for more information on everything, that's October 25th. I meant to say that. GeorgeLynch.com, George Lynch Official on Instagram. Facebook has Lynch Mob Band, but just go to GeorgeLynch.com and then you'll everything will lead from
Wait a
there.
minute. Facebook has Lynch Mob banned?
Yeah, I saw it. It was in the release from the publicist. There's a Facebook that and they don't only promote Lynch Bomb. They were also promoting an album I think that you put out about a year ago, or sorry, about a month ago. So maybe that's a fan
Guitars,
page, but I'm telling you
guitars at
that
the
yeah,
guitars at the end of the world
yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
guitars at the end of the world is the instrumental record that I have out right now
yeah.
currently.
Well, yeah, it was on the list of plugs from the publicist. So apparently you're on Facebook. The band is anyway, even if you're not. But the
Hmm.
Instagram seems like it's you, you know, because I looked at it and I saw a post and you know I guess over the summer you had to miss a show and you talked about how you hate missing shows, but you had like busted a rib or something. So it seemed like it was really you. So that's your source for George Lynch is George Lynch Official on Instagram.
Yeah, I've got Instagram, Patreon. I'm not really. I don't do Facebook, so I've got a person that handles that and runs that
Sure,
for me.
sure.
But I couldn't log. I couldn't access Facebook if you put a gun to my head. I don't know how to do
Well,
that. So I appreciate the information. I'll pass it along.
yeah, absolutely. But and that's
All right.
for everybody else to see. And as we've said a few times, Babylon, October 20th. Can't wait to hear the whole album and maybe even pop in on that show at the Whiskey. I'd love to see you guys play some of the stuff live. George,
Yeah,
thanks
man. If
for.
you're in LA,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm in Burbank, so I'm in you know in LA in the literal sense. You know, I could probably be to the Whiskey in about 90 minutes right now.
yeah, I'm sitting on the side of a road next to the Van Nuys Airport in North
Oh.
Hollywood. So
I
we're
should, you know what,
neighbors.
George? I should have just met you there at a folding table. This would have been easier.
Yeah, but then the planes would have been landing and coming overhead, and we've been able to
That's a
hear it.
great point. Yeah,
It-
exactly.
uh,
Well,
all
George,
right.
thanks again for taking the time. I really enjoyed chatting with you and
You
looking
as well.
forward to hearing the album and checking out some of the stuff live. Thanks again, George Lynch.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Sure thing.
Take care.